Thank you very much, Senator and Chief. I'm just gonna, before I call on Pierre to thank our guest speaker, I just wanted to point something out. I don't know if you guys watched this amazing video that Pierre posted on his website. It's a speech that Pierre gave on the budget. I really encourage you to watch it. It's a good speech, and I just wanted to, actually I'll tell you where to find it. It's pierremp.ca/budget. So pierremp.ca/budget. So I thought you really should have a look at that video. You'll enjoy it. And of course Pierre wouldn't have it any other way. I have to tell you about it. Okay. Pierre, wanna come up please and say a few words?
Well, thank you very much, and let me begin by giving a special thank you to Bill Ayed, who's responsible for organizing these breakfasts every quarter. So thank you, Bill, for pulling this together. You do a great job. We're very blessed as well to have had our former police chief, our new senator, with us today to talk about fighting crime, keeping our streets safe, and the future of our country. I think you'll all agree that amongst all the senators that do serve on Parliament Hill, he's one of the only ones who would be capable of actually getting elected to the job if he were forced to. Given the reforms that we're bringing to the Senate, slowly but surely, he might just get a chance. So there were just Senate elections in Alberta, actually. And 3 positions were filled by elected people that ran simultaneous to the provincial election. And I called on Dalton McGuinty here in Ontario to hold senatorial elections. In the past, he has yet refused to do so. But in the future, I think the people of this province should have the same rights as the people now in Alberta have, which is to choose the people that represent them in the upper chamber. I do want to conclude that point about our outgoing chief. You did an excellent job, Verne, as our chief. People across the city are unanimous in that view. They are very pleased with the work that you did to serve our communities, and I think we live in one of the safest places in the world as a result of the excellent initiatives that you undertook when you were chief, and we all owe you an enormous debt of gratitude right across the city of Ottawa. Thank you very much. So we now have a choice as a country of whether we want to be a debtor nation or a working nation, because that is the dichotomy into which all the countries of the earth are dividing right now. The United States and Europe have undertaken experiments with the welfare state. The United States, south of the border, they implemented a plan to force banks to provide mortgages to people who could never repay them. And we saw a massive mortgage-driven financial collapse. They undertook government spending for which they did not have any corresponding revenues, and they now have a national debt that is bigger than the size of the entire US economy. In Europe, countries like Greece have government debt that is 1.5 times the size of their entire economies. The European Bailout Fund has come to the rescue, and that bailout fund has now been downgraded. So soon the bailout fund is going to need a bailout. This is the humiliating experience that all countries who are moving towards welfare states are now living. And here in Canada, we live just north of the United States and just on the other side of the pond of Europe. Much of our ancestry comes from the European continent, and many of our closest friends and neighbors live south of the border. So a lot of people would assume that we would go down their path. But so far, under this Prime Minister, we've done exactly the opposite. We have the lowest deficit to GDP ratio in the developed world. Our deficit is now less than 1% the size of our economy, and it will be gone within 3 years, if not sooner, without raising taxes. just instituted a budget that makes government $5 billion less expensive, removes red tape so that our industrialists can reach the cornucopia of natural resources with which we've been blessed, almost $500 billion worth that we can pursue over the next several decades, that opens up free trade with Europe and India and removes the mountain of paperwork that our small businesses have to do so that they can build a mountain of success in its place. That is the agenda that our government has undertaken. So taxes are falling, deficits are falling, and our debt is the smallest amongst all of our competitors. We have on the other side, though, an opposition with a very different view. Thomas Mulcair actually said last week that the problem in Europe is that they're not borrowing and spending enough money. You know, Tommy Douglas, the founder of the CCF, which became the NDP, once recalled that the problem with socialists is that they always let their bleeding hearts go to their bloody heads. And I think that's exactly what has happened to our friend Thomas Mulcair. But he and Bob Rae agree. They all advocate a 45-day work year in EI. Someone could work for 45 days and then collect EI for the rest of the year. They want to make people who've only been in this country for 3 years eligible to collect OAS from 65 until natural death at an enormous cost to the people who've paid into the system for their entire lives. And they want a balloon spending, all paid for by higher taxes and more borrowing. So we really are choosing in the next election, which will be 3 years from now, between the Canadian way, which has worked, or the American and European way, which has so humiliatingly failed. And that is the choice that we have to present to the Canadian people. Every day, we must remind them of how good we have it in this country, how fortunate we are to be Canadian, and how the only way to keep that good fortune is to make the right decisions and stand for the right values. And I pledge to continue to do those things on your behalf. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, Pierre.